Look at this dump, Luna. I deserve a castle, and you're dragging me into the gutter. Get out. I don't care if it's Christmas Eve. I'm done settling." He threw his pregnant wife into a blizzard for a younger model, convinced his golden ticket had arrived. He thought Luna was a penniless orphan dragging him down. He didn't know that the penniless woman shivering in the snow was actually Luna Morrison, the sole heiress to the biggest fortune in the city. And when she stopped crying, she started calculating. This is the story of a man who sold a diamond to buy a fake, and the karma that hit him harder than a freight train. The smell of rosemary and roasting chicken fought a losing battle against the scent of damp plaster and the metallic tang of old copper pipes. It was Christmas Eve in apartment 4B, a walk-up in the grittiest part of Chicago that smelled perpetually of boiled cabbage and regret. Luna Morrison, known here only as Luna Garrett, hummed a soft, trembling melody as she basted the chicken. Her hand went instinctively to her stomach. It was still flat, but the knowledge of the life growing inside her felt heavy, a secret she had wrapped in hope, waiting for tonight to gift it to her husband, Porter. She had met Porter 3 years ago. He was an ambitious, handsome architect with eyes the color of polished slate and a smile that promised the world. She had fallen for the hunger in him, but Luna had a secret of her own. She wasn't just a struggling freelance graphic designer. She was the only granddaughter of Maxwell Morrison, the steel and tech magnate whose name adorned the skyline's tallest towers. She had walked away from the billions to find someone who loved her, not the portfolio. She thought she found that in Porter. She was wrong. The front door didn't open. It slammed against the stopper with a violence that made the cheap plastic tinsel on the tree shiver. Luna jumped, dropping the basting spoon. "Porter? You're home early. I was just—" Porter Garrett stomped into the small kitchenette, shaking snow from his cashmere coat, a coat he couldn't afford. Bought on credit Luna was secretly paying off. He didn't look at her. He looked around the room with a sneer of absolute disgust. "It smells like poverty in here," Porter spat, kicking his boots off against the wall, leaving a muddy streak on the peeling floral wallpaper. "It's rosemary, Porter," Luna said, her voice small. She wiped her hands on her apron. "I made your favorite, and I have news. A gift." "I don't want your gifts, Luna. I don't want your chicken. I don't want this." He gestured wildly at the room, at the small, crooked tree with its handmade ornaments, at the leaky faucet, at her. Behind him, the hallway shadows shifted. A woman stepped into the light of the apartment. She was tall, impossibly slender, draped in a white fox fur that cost more than Porter's annual salary. Her hair was a cascade of platinum blonde, and her lips were painted a predatory crimson. Isla Lawson, the model, the it girl of the moment on social media. Luna recognized her immediately from the magazines Porter left, scattered around the bathroom. Luna felt the blood drain from her face, pooling somewhere in her feet. "Porter? Who is this?" Isla giggled, a sound like ice cubes clinking in a crystal glass. She didn't look at Luna, she looked at the stove. "Oh, Porter, darling, you were right. It's positively Dickensian in here. Do you actually eat that?" Porter moved to Isla's side, his demeanor shifting from aggression to a fawning, pathetic adoration. He wrapped an arm around the fur coat. "Isla, baby, don't touch anything. You might catch something." He turned his cold, slate eyes back to Luna. The warmth she had once seen there was gone, replaced by a glacial wall of contempt. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He threw it. It didn't glide. It slapped onto the kitchen table with a heavy thud. "Divorce papers," Porter said. "Signed. I need your signature. Now." Luna stared at the envelope. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Divorce? Porter, it's Christmas Eve. We promised." I promise to love, honor, and cherish, Porter scoffed. I didn't promise to rot in a squalid hole with a woman who has no ambition. Look at you, Luna. Look at your ragged sweaters. Look at your hands. You're holding me back. I work hard for us, Luna whispered, the hurt blooming in her chest like a bruise. I pay the bills, you forget. I supported you when you got fired from the firm. And that's all you'll ever do, Porter roared, stepping forward, looming over her. Support! You're a crutch! Isla is a rocket ship. She has connections. Her brother, Felix, is setting up a firm. I'm going to be a partner, Luna. A partner? I'm moving into the penthouse at the St. Regis tonight. Isla inspected her manicured nails. We need the apartment cleared out, sweetie. Well, actually, we don't need the apartment. Porter just needs to cut the dead weight so we can fly. Luna felt a wave of nausea, not morning sickness this time, but pure, unadulterated shock. Porter, she said, her voice gaining a sudden steel edge, I am pregnant. The room went silent. The radiator hissed and clanked. Isla let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Oh, wow. The trap baby. Oldest trick in the book, how cliché. Porter stared at her stomach, then at her face. For a second, Luna saw a flicker of hesitation. But it wasn't love. It was calculation. He was wondering if this would cost him money. Get rid of it, Porter said. The words hung in the air, more violent than the door slam. What? Luna breathed. You heard me, Porter sneered, grabbing Isla's hand, as if to anchor himself in his new reality. I'm not paying for a mistake. I'm starting a new life, a wealthy life. I don't need an anchor dragging me back to mediocrity. If you're pregnant, that's your problem. Sign the papers, Luna. Take the settlement. It's $5,000. That's more than you've ever seen in your life. Take it and go. $5,000. She had a trust fund worth $900 million maturing in 6 months, and he was offering her $5,000 to disappear. Luna looked at the man she had loved. She saw the greed in his jawline, the weakness in his eyes. She saw a man who thought value was determined by the label on a coat, not the loyalty in a heart. She reached for the pen on the counter. Fine, she said, her voice hollow. But remember this moment, Porter. Remember the night you chose a coat over your child. The wind outside was a physical assault. It was 20 degrees below freezing, a typical Chicago vortex that turned breath into ice crystals instantly. Luna stood on the sidewalk, a single battered suitcase by her side. Porter hadn't let her finish packing. He had thrown clothes into the bag, mostly her old things, keeping the few nice items he had bought her, claiming he paid for them. He had physically ushered her out the door, Isla laughing in the background as she poured a glass of the cheap wine Luna had bought for dinner. Cheers to the upgrade, Isla had toasted as the door slammed in Luna's face. Luna stood under the flickering street lamp. The snow was falling in thick, heavy sheets, burying her feet. She had no gloves. Her hands were red and raw, clutching the handle of the suitcase. She touched her stomach again. The anger hadn't set in yet. She was still in the numb phase of shock. She looked up at the window of 4B. She saw the silhouette of Porter and Isla. They were kissing. The injustice of it felt like a knife twisting in her gut. She had played the role of the supportive wife perfectly. She had cooked, cleaned, budgeted, and soothed his ego when the world was hard on him. She had hidden her identity to ensure his love was pure. And the moment a shinier object appeared, he discarded her like a wrapper. She began to walk. She couldn't feel her toes. She had nowhere to go. At least that's what Porter thought. She walked 2 blocks to a payphone outside a 24-hour diner. Her cell phone had been on Porter's family plan, and he had cut it off 10 minutes ago. She could see the no service icon on the screen. Petty. Thoroughly petty. She fumbled in her pocket for quarters. Her fingers were stiff, clumsy blocks of ice. She dropped one coin into the snow. She fell to her knees to find it, tears finally spilling over, hot and stinging against her frozen cheeks. Why? She sobbed into the slush. Why wasn't I enough? But as the cold seeped into her jeans, a different voice answered in her head. It was the voice of her grandfather, Maxwell. Morrisons do not weep in the snow, Luna. We buy the plow. She found the quarter. She stood up. She wiped her face with a sleeve that smelled of the rosemary chicken she never got to eat. She dialed a number she hadn't called in 3 years. It rang once. Twice. Morrison residence? Quincy speaking. A crisp, British voice answered. Trevor Quincy, her grandfather's head of security and her childhood best friend, the man she had left behind to chase a normal life. Trevor, Luna croaked. Her voice was broken, unrecognizable. There was a pause. Miss Luna, is that you? My God, we've been... Where are you? I'm at the corner of 5th and Main, by the diner, she whispered, her teeth chattering so hard she bit her tongue. I'm cold, Trevor. I'm so cold. Stay there. Trevor's voice shifted from professional to fiercely protective. Do not move. I am 10 minutes out. Is he with you? No, Luna said, looking back toward the apartment building disappearing into the whiteout. He's gone. I'm alone. And Trevor, bring the car. The big one. Understood, Miss Luna. She hung up and waited. The wind howled, cutting through her thin coat. A group of men walked out of a bar across the street, jeering at her, calling out catcalls about a lonely girl on Christmas. Luna stared straight ahead, her eyes fixed on the traffic light changing from red to green. 10 minutes later, the darkness was sliced apart by blinding LED headlights. A convoy of 3 black SUVs tore down the snowy street, ignoring speed limits and lane markers. They screeched to a halt in front of the diner. Men in black tactical gear poured out of the lead and rear vehicles, forming a perimeter. The middle car's door flew open. Trevor Quincy, tall, dark-skinned, and impeccable even in his hurried state, sprinted toward her. He wore a long wool coat over a suit. He didn't say a word. He simply took off his coat and wrapped it around her shivering frame. It was warm and smelled of sandalwood and safety. I've got you, he said, his voice low and dangerous. He looked at her bruiseless but broken face, then at the suitcase. Did he do this? He divorced me, Luna said, her voice detached. For a model. He threw me out, Trevor. He told me to get rid of the baby. Trevor froze. His eyes widened, shifting to her stomach. Baby, you are. I'm pregnant. And I'm the heir to the Morrison empire. And he threw me away for $5,000. Trevor's jaw tightened until a muscle popped. He guided her toward the warm leather interior of the middle SUV. He has made a mistake of astronomical proportions, Luna. Let's get you home. As the car pulled away, Luna looked out the tinted window at the dirty snow of her old life. She wasn't Luna Garrett anymore. That woman had died on the sidewalk. Serafina Luna Morrison was coming back, and she had a lot of work to do. The transition from the freezing street corner to the Morrison estate in Lake Forest was jarring. The SUV glided through iron gates that were twice the height of the apartment building she had just been evicted from. The driveway was heated from beneath, melting the snow instantly, a black ribbon cutting through the white landscape. The mansion was a sprawling masterpiece of Gothic revival architecture, lit up like a beacon against the storm. It was a fortress of wealth. Maxwell Morrison waited in the grand foyer. He was 80 years old, sitting in a wheelchair, but his presence filled the room like thunder. He had a blanket over his legs and a glass of scotch in his trembling hand. When the doors opened and Trevor helped Luna inside, the old man's glass fell to the marble floor, shattering. Serafina, Maxwell whispered. Luna ran to him, collapsing at his knees. The stoicism she had mustered in the car evaporated. She buried her face in his lap and wept. She cried for the 3 years she had wasted playing house. She cried for the chicken in the oven. She cried for the father of her child who wished it dead. Maxwell stroked her hair, his hand heavy with rings. I told you, child. I told you the world is full of wolves. You tried to live among the sheep, but you forgot you are a lioness. I just wanted to be loved for me, she sobbed. And you are, Maxwell said fiercely. By us. By your blood. Now tell me, what did the bastard do? Later, sitting by a roaring fire in the library, wrapped in a blanket woven from vicuña wool, Luna told them everything. Trevor stood by the fireplace, adding logs, his back stiff with suppressed rage. Maxwell listened, his eyes narrowing. He doesn't know, Maxwell asked. He thinks I'm an orphan. He thinks I have nothing, Luna said, sipping a cup of hot tea that a maid had brought on a silver tray. Good, Maxwell said. Let him think that. Let him think he has won. Victory makes men careless, and when he is most careless, we will strike. No, Luna said softly. She placed a hand on her stomach. Not yet. I need to heal. I need to protect this baby. If I go after him now, the stress. I can't lose this child, grandfather. It's the only good thing that came from him. Trevor turned around. We can bury him legally, Miss Luna. I can have his credit ruined by morning. I can have that model's career ended with a phone call. No, Luna repeated, her eyes hardening. If you destroy him now, he'll blame bad luck. He'll blame the world. I want him to destroy himself. I want him to climb as high as he can, to taste the life he thinks he deserves. And then, when he realizes it's empty, I want him to see me. I want him to know exactly what he threw away. Maxwell smiled, a dry, terrifying stretching of skin. That's my girl. The long game. 6 months later, the tabloids were full of Porter Garrett and Isla Lawson. They were the power couple of Chicago architecture. Porter had made partner at Felix Lawson's firm, nepotism disguised as talent. They were photographed at galas, on yachts, in the penthouse. Luna watched it all from the safety of the estate. She had cut her hair into a sharp, chic bob. She wore tailored silk instead of oversized sweaters. She had resumed her position on the board of Morrison Industries, under her middle name, Serafina, working remotely, hidden from the public eye. She was 7 months pregnant now. Her belly was swollen and round. She sat in the nursery, a room painted in soft pastels with a crib that cost more than Porter's car. Trevor entered quietly. The report you asked for, he said, handing her a tablet. Luna looked at the screen. It was Porter's financial breakdown. Credit card debt, $150,000. Mortgage on penthouse, leveraging 90%. Isla's monthly allowance, $40,000. He's bleeding, Trevor said. Isla spends faster than he earns. Felix is using Porter's name to sign off on risky construction permits to shield himself from liability. Porter is the fall guy, and he's too arrogant to see it. He thinks he's king, Luna said, swiping through photos of Porter, looking exhausted, but forcing a smile at a charity event. He looks tired. He looks like a man carrying a burden he wasn't built for, Trevor corrected. Miss Luna, the Morrison Group is opening bids for the new Skyline Spire project next month. It's a $1 billion contract. Luna looked up, a spark in her eyes. And Felix Lawson's firm will bid? They are desperate for it. It's the only way they can cover their debts. Luna smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Let them bid. Ensure they make the final round. I want Porter to present the pitch personally. To whom? To the CEO of Morrison Industries, Luna said, standing up. It's time Serafina Morrison came out of the shadows. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her abdomen. Luna gasped, clutching the side of the crib. Miss Luna? Trevor dropped the tablet, rushing to her side. It's too early, Luna whispered, panic rising in her throat. I'm only 30 weeks. Trevor, it hurts. Water pooled on the expensive rug. Prepare the car, Trevor shouted into his wrist radio, scooping Luna up into his arms effortlessly. Medical team on standby. We are moving. As they rushed down the grand staircase, Luna gritted her teeth against the pain. You will not take this from me, Porter, she thought. You took my Christmas. You took my trust. But you will not take my child. Outside, the summer rain was warm, but Luna felt cold again. The baby was coming, and Porter was likely popping champagne across town, oblivious that the heir to a dynasty, his heir, was fighting for its life. The war had begun, but first, she had to be a mother. The sterile beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the private suite of the Morrison Medical Wing. Outside, the summer storm had broken, leaving the world washed clean and vibrant. But inside, the air was thick with tension. Luna lay back against the pillows, her hair plastered to her forehead, her face pale but triumphant. In her arms, wrapped in a blanket embroidered with the Morrison crest, a lion rampant holding a star, was a tiny, squirming bundle. He has your chin, Miss Luna, Trevor whispered, his usual stoic demeanor softened by awe. He stood by the bedside, looking down at the infant as if he were a rare, fragile jewel. He has Porter's eyes, Luna murmured, tracing the baby's cheek. But he will have my grandfather's heart. They named him Leo Maxwell Morrison. He was premature, born at 31 weeks, but he was a fighter. He had spent 3 weeks in the NICU, a glass box that felt terrifyingly fragile. But today, he was finally in his mother's arms. The joy of his arrival, however, was tempered by a shadow. 2 days after Leo's birth, Maxwell Morrison had passed away in his sleep. He had held Leo's tiny hand for 5 minutes, whispered a blessing, and then simply let go, his watch over the dynasty complete. Luna was no longer just a granddaughter. She was the matriarch. The weight of a $40 billion empire now rested solely on her shoulders. She had grieved in private, screaming into her pillow at night, but during the day, she was steel. Across the city, in the gleaming glass tower of the St. Regis, Porter Garrett stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. He looked older. The lines around his eyes had deepened, and his skin had a gray, unhealthy pallor. "Porter, are you deaf?" Isla's voice shrilled from the bedroom. Porter flinched. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to wash away the exhaustion. "I'm coming, Isla," he called back, his voice lacking the snap it once had. He walked into the master bedroom. It was a chaotic mess of designer clothes, open shoeboxes, and empty champagne bottles. Isla was lounging on the bed, scrolling through her phone. "My card was declined," she said without looking up. "At the spa. Do you know how embarrassing that is? The receptionist looked at me like I was a peasant." "It's a glitch," Porter lied, adjusting his tie. It wasn't a glitch. He had maxed out 3 credit cards to pay for the lease on the penthouse and the lease on Isla's new Porsche. "I'll call the bank." "You better," Isla snapped. "Felix says the firm is bleeding money. He says you're not bringing in the big clients you promised. Maybe if you spent less time moping and more time networking, we wouldn't be in this mess." Porter felt a flash of white-hot anger. "I'm working 18 hours a day, Isla. I'm designing the entire riverfront project by myself because Felix is too busy gambling away the retainer fees." Isla laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound. "Oh, poor baby. You wanted the big life, remember? You wanted the castle. Well, castles cost money, darling. Don't be a bore. Just fix it." Porter grabbed his briefcase and stormed out. As he waited for the elevator, he leaned his forehead against the cool marble wall. He closed his eyes, and for a fleeting second, he smelled rosemary chicken. He remembered a small, warm apartment where he was looked at with adoration, not expectation. He remembered Luna. She's probably miserable, he told himself, a desperate mantra he repeated daily. She's probably struggling to pay rent in some basement, regretting the day she held me back. He didn't know that at that exact moment, Luna was signing a document that would authorize the acquisition of the bank holding his mortgage. Autumn arrived in Chicago with a vengeance, turning the trees along Lakeshore Drive into skeletons of gold and rust. At the headquarters of Morrison Industries, the mood was electric. The Skyline Spire project had been announced, a 100-story sustainable skyscraper that would redefine the city's profile. It was the contract of the decade. In the boardroom of Lawson and Garrett Architects, the atmosphere was less electric and more desperate. Felix Lawson, Isla's brother, paced the room. He was a man who wore expensive suits to hide a cheap soul. "We need this, Porter. We are leveraged to the hilt. If we don't land the Spire, the firm goes under. And if the firm goes under, the auditors come in. And if the auditors come in," he trailed off, implying prison time for embezzlement. Porter sat at the head of the table, staring at the blueprints. "The design is solid, Felix. It's my best work. But Morrison Industries is notoriously insular. They usually hire internal teams. Why did they invite us to bid?" "Who cares?" Felix snapped. "We got the invitation. That's what matters. You're the golden boy, Porter. You have the charisma. You go in there, you charm the pants off the CEO, and you bring home the check." "Do we even know who the CEO is?" Porter asked. "Old man Morrison died months ago. The board has been tight-lipped about the successor." "Some interim suit, probably." Felix waved a hand. "Doesn't matter. Just sell the vision." Porter looked at the model of the Spire. It was beautiful. Sharp, soaring, ambitious. It was everything he had ever wanted to build. But looking at it now, he felt nothing but nausea. That night, Porter returned home late. The penthouse was empty. Isla was at a networking event, which usually meant partying with influencers until 4 a.m. He sat on the velvet sofa, loosening his tie. He was hungry. He opened the fridge, a bottle of Dom Perignon, a jar of olives, and some moldy cheese. He slammed the fridge door shut. He grabbed his coat and walked out. He found himself driving without thinking, the car navigating the snowy streets on muscle memory. He parked 2 blocks away from his old apartment on 5th and Main. He walked to the building. It looked even shabbier than he remembered. He looked up at window 4B. It was dark. He felt a strange pang in his chest. Where did she go? A neighbor, Mrs. Gable, was walking her dog. She squinted at him. "You? The husband?" Porter stiffened. "I used to live here." "Yeah, I remember," Mrs. Gable spat. "You're the one who left that poor girl on Christmas. Real piece of work you are." "Do you know where she went?" Porter asked, ignoring the insult. "Gone," Mrs. Gable said. "Some fancy car picked her up. Black SUVs. Looked like the president or something. Haven't seen her since. Hope she found a man who isn't trash." Porter watched her walk away. Black SUVs? It didn't make sense. Luna had no one. Unless she had found a rich boyfriend immediately. The thought made him irrationally jealous. He got back in his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "She replaced me," he thought bitterly. Just like that. He didn't see the black sedan parked down the street, its engine idling silently. Inside, Trevor Quincy spoke into his earpiece. "The target is agitated. He visited the old residence. He is unraveling, Miss Luna." In the nursery at the Morrison estate, Luna listened through her own earpiece as she rocked Leo to sleep. "Good," she whispered. "Let him stew. Tomorrow is the pitch. Tomorrow, we close the trap." She looked down at her son. "Tomorrow, we get justice for us, little lion." The Morrison Industries headquarters was a fortress of steel and glass, piercing the clouds. Porter stood in the lobby, smoothing his suit jacket. His palms were sweating. This was it. The make-or-break moment. Felix was beside him, twitching. Remember, focus on the cost-saving materials. They love that budget crap. I'm focusing on the art, Felix, Porter hissed. Shut up. A young assistant with an iPad approached them. Lawson and Garrett, the board is ready for you. They were led to the top floor. The elevator ride was silent and agonizingly long. When the doors opened, they stepped into a waiting area that smelled of money. Old money. Teak walls, abstract art that cost millions, and a view of the entire city. Mr. Garrett, the assistant said, the CEO requests that you present alone. Mr. Lawson can wait here. What? Felix bristled. I'm the senior partner. Company policy, the assistant said coolly. Porter felt a surge of relief. He didn't want Felix's slimy energy in the room. It's fine, Felix. I've got this. Porter grabbed his portfolio and followed the assistant down a long corridor. At the end were double mahogany doors. Good luck, the assistant said, opening the doors. Porter walked in. The boardroom was massive. A table long enough to seat 50 people dominated the space. But it was empty, save for one person sitting at the far end. The chair turned toward the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the skyline. Porter cleared his throat, his voice echoing in the vast space. Good morning. I'm Porter Garrett. I'm here to present the proposal for the Skyline Spire. The chair didn't move. I have the blueprints here, Porter continued, his confidence faltering. It's a design based on resilience, rising from the ashes, so to speak. Resilience, a voice said from the chair. Porter froze. He knew that voice. It was smoother now, commanding, stripped of the timid hesitation he remembered. But the timbre was unmistakable. It's a funny word, isn't it, Porter? The chair slowly swiveled around. Porter dropped his portfolio. The papers scattered across the polished floor like fallen leaves. Sitting at the head of the table was Luna. But it wasn't the Luna he knew. The fraying sweaters and messy bun were gone. This woman wore a tailored navy power suit that looked like it had been sculpted to her body. Her hair was a sharp, glossy bob. Diamonds, real, heavy diamonds, glinted at her throat and ears. Her eyes, once warm and pleading, were now cold, hard flint. Luna! Porter gasped, the air leaving his lungs. What are you doing here? How did you get in? You're the secretary? Luna laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was dry and sharp. The secretary? Oh, Porter. You really never looked, did you? You never looked past the surface. She pressed a button on the intercom. Trevor, please bring in the refreshments. The side door opened, and Trevor Quincy walked in, looking every inch the head of security, flanked by 2 guards. He placed a glass of water in front of Luna. Thank you, Trevor, she said. Porter stared at Trevor, then back at Luna. I don't understand. Luna, tell me what's going on. Is this a joke? Did you sleep your way into a job here? Luna stood up. She didn't shout. She didn't scream. She simply radiated power. I didn't sleep my way in, Porter. I was born here. My name is Serafina Luna Morrison. Maxwell Morrison was my grandfather. I own this building. I own this company. I own the bank that holds your mortgage. I own the debt that Felix is drowning in. Porter staggered back, his legs hitting the edge of the table. No, that's impossible. We lived in a dump. You ate leftovers. You were poor. I was hiding, Luna said, walking slowly down the length of the table toward him. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the wood. I wanted to know if a man could love me for me, not for the billions attached to my name. I wanted to see if you had a heart, Porter. She stopped 3 feet from him. She smelled of expensive perfume and cold vengeance. And you showed me, she whispered, on Christmas Eve. You showed me exactly who you are. Luna, wait, Porter stammered, his brain misfiring, trying to recalibrate his entire reality. I didn't know. If I had known. If you had known, you would have stayed, Luna finished for him. You would have stayed for the money. You would have been a leech, sucking me dry while you cheated on the side. I'm glad you didn't know. It saved me a lifetime of lies. I loved you, Porter cried out, the desperation clawing at his throat. We can fix this. Luna, baby, look at you. You're incredible. This power suits you. We were a team, remember? We can rule this city together. We? Luna raised an eyebrow. There is no we. There is you, and there is your mistress. By the way, how is Isla? She means nothing to me, Porter shouted. It was a mistake, a midlife crisis. I'll leave her. I'll leave her right now. Luna, please. The baby. What about the baby? You said you were pregnant. Luna's expression softened, but only for a fraction of a second, before hardening into granite. My son, she said, emphasizing the word. His name is Leo, and he is perfect, and he will never, ever know you. You can't do that, Porter said, stepping forward aggressively. I'm his father. I have rights. You signed your rights away, Luna said, pulling a document from the folder on the table. Remember the divorce papers, the settlement? My lawyers added a clause. Complete severance of parental rights in exchange for expedited processing. You didn't even read it, did you? You were too busy staring at Isla's legs. Porter stared at the paper. He felt the room spinning. Now, Luna said, her voice dropping to a terrifying calm. About your pitch, the Skyline Spire. Please, Porter whispered. I need this job. I'm drowning, Luna. The design is adequate, Luna said, picking up one of the fallen blueprints. She looked at it, then ripped it in half. The sound of the tearing paper was louder than a gunshot in the silent room. But Morrison Industries does not do business with men who abandon their families in blizzards, she said, dropping the torn pieces at his feet. Your bid is rejected. And Lawson and Garrett? I'm calling in the loans today. You have 24 hours to pay $2 million, or the firm is seized. You're ruining me, Porter choked out. I'm not ruining you, Porter, Luna said, turning her back on him and walking back to her chair. I'm just buying the plow. She sat down and spun the chair around to face the window again. Trevor, show Mr. Garrett out. And make sure he takes his trash with him. As Trevor grabbed Porter's arm with a grip like iron, Porter looked at the back of the woman he had thrown away. He realized then, with a sickening clarity, that he had held a diamond in his hand and thrown it into the mud to pick up a piece of broken glass. Luna! He screamed as he was dragged out. Luna, please! But the chair didn't turn. The Queen remained on her throne, and the door slammed shut on Porter's life. The elevator ride down from the penthouse of Morrison Industries was the longest of Porter Garrett's life. When the doors opened to the lobby, security guards were already waiting. They didn't speak. They simply escorted him to the revolving doors and pushed him out onto the sidewalk. It was raining again. The city felt gray and hostile. Porter stood there, the ripped pieces of his blueprint still clutched in his hand, getting soaked. He looked up at the tower, at the invisible point in the clouds where Luna sat, ruling a world he had once believed was his birthright. His phone buzzed. It was Felix. "Where are you?" Felix screamed. "The bank just called. They're freezing the accounts. They're sending agents to the office. Did you get the contract? Tell me you got the contract." "It's over, Felix," Porter said into the phone, his voice sounding dead to his own ears. "She knows everything." "She? Who is she?" "Luna. She's the CEO. She's Serafina Morrison." There was a silence on the other end, profound and terrified. Then, a string of curses so vile they made Porter flinch. "You idiot! You married a Morrison and you didn't know? You threw away $1 billion safety net? I'm ruined. I'm coming for you, Porter. I'm going to... Porter hung up. He dropped the phone into a puddle. He didn't care. He hailed a cab, giving the address of the St. Regis. He needed to get home. He needed to talk to Isla. Maybe they could run. Maybe they could go to Mexico. When he arrived at the penthouse, the door was ajar. Inside, chaos reigned. Movers were hauling furniture out. "Hey!" Porter shouted, grabbing a man carrying his Eames chair. "Put that down! What are you doing?" "Repossession order," the man grunted, shoving a clipboard into Porter's chest. "Bank seized the property an hour ago. Eviction notice is effective immediately." Porter ran into the bedroom. Isla was there, frantically stuffing jewelry into a Louis Vuitton duffel bag. She looked wild, her mascara running. "Isla," Porter gasped. "We have to go. We have to leave the city." Isla spun around, her eyes blazing with panic and fury. "We? There is no we. My cards are dead, Porter. My car was towed from the valet stand 10 minutes ago. They said the lease was in default." "It's Luna," Porter said, sinking onto the edge of the stripped mattress. "She's doing this. She owns the debt." Isla froze. The mouse? The pregnant charity case? "She's a billionaire, Isla. She was testing me. And I failed." Isla stared at him, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then, the realization hit her, not of the tragedy, but of the missed opportunity. You had a billionaire wife, and you left her for this?" She gestured at the empty room, at herself. "I left her for you because I loved you," Porter pleaded. "You fool," Isla spat. She zipped up the bag. "I don't date failures, Porter, and I certainly don't date homeless men." "Isla, wait. Where will you go?" "Felix has a stash in the Caymans. I'm getting on the first flight out." She brushed past him, her fur coat hitting him in the face. At the door, she turned back. "By the way, you were never a partner. Felix never filed the paperwork. You were just an employee with a fancy title. You're liable for the firm's debts, though. Felix made sure of that." The door slammed. Porter sat alone in the empty penthouse as the repo men took the lamps, then the rug, then the bed he was sitting on. He was left on the floor. He had no wife. He had no child. He had no home. He had no career. And now he knew he had been a pawn in everyone's game. Isla's, Felix's, and ultimately, Luna's. Karma hadn't just hit him. It had dismantled him, brick by brick. 2 years later, Chicago was in the grip of another brutal winter. The wind coming off Lake Michigan felt like razor blades. In a small, cramped studio apartment in the South Side, far smaller and dirtier than the one he had shared with Luna, Porter Garrett woke up. He coughed, a hacking sound that rattled his thin chest. He got up and put on his uniform, a green jumpsuit with "Sanitation Dept" stitched on the pocket. He was a garbage collector. It was the only job he could get. His architecture license had been revoked after the investigation into Felix Lawson's firm revealed massive fraud and structural negligence. Felix was in federal prison. Isla was rumored to be married to a drug lord in Miami, though Porter tried not to think about her. Porter drank instant coffee that tasted like mud. He walked to the window. It was taped up with cardboard where the draft came in. He looked at the newspaper on his small table. He bought it every Sunday, not for the news, but for the society section. There she was. Serafina Morrison launches the Garrett Initiative, a foundation for single mothers. The photo showed Luna cutting a ribbon. She looked radiant, powerful, and happy. Standing next to her was a toddler, a little boy with curly hair and bright eyes. Leo. He was 2 years old now. Porter stared at the photo. He touched the boy's face with a rough, calloused finger. "He looks like me," Porter whispered to the empty room. He did. Leo had Porter's jawline, his brow, but he was holding the hand of a tall, broad-shouldered man standing next to Luna. The caption identified him as Julian Thorne, Director of Operations at Morrison Industries, and fiancé to Serafina Morrison. Porter felt a tear slide down his cheek. It wasn't the angry, entitled crying of the man who had screamed on Christmas Eve. It was the quiet, resigned weeping of a man who knows he is dead while still breathing. He finished his coffee, put on his heavy boots, and went out into the snow to pick up other people's trash. His route took him downtown today. It was Christmas Eve. The irony was not lost on him. As the garbage truck rumbled down the magnificent mile, they passed the new skyline spire. It was finished. It was breathtaking. A twisting needle of glass that seemed to pierce the heavens. It was the building he had wanted to build, but better. Luna's internal team had redesigned it. The truck stopped at a red light in front of the Morrison Estates city office. A crowd was gathered. Paparazzi flashes popped. A black limousine pulled up. Porter watched from the cab of the truck. The door opened. Luna stepped out. She wore a red coat, vibrant against the snow. Julian helped her out, then lifted Leo from the car seat. Porter rolled down the window. The cold air hit him. "Luna!" The shout tore from his throat before he could stop it. It was raw, desperate. Luna stopped. She turned. Her eyes scanned the street. They passed over the shoppers, the tourists, and landed on the garbage truck. She saw him. Porter froze. He wanted to look away, to hide his shame, but he couldn't. He looked at her with all the sorrow and apology he possessed. Luna stared at him for a long heartbeat. There was no anger in her face anymore. There was no triumph. There was only a distant, pitying recognition, like one might look at a stranger who had tripped on the sidewalk. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply turned her back, took Julian's arm, and walked into the building. Leo, resting on Julian's shoulder, looked back. He stared right at Porter with wide, curious eyes. He waved a tiny, mitten-clad hand. Porter raised his hand slowly, hesitantly, and waved back. The light turned green. The driver honked. "Let's go, Garrett. We got a schedule." Porter rolled up the window. The image of his son waving at him was burned into his retinas. It was the only Christmas gift he would get, and it was more than he deserved. That night, the wind howled through the canyons of the city, driving the snow horizontally against the brickwork. Porter found himself standing outside St. Michael's Cathedral. He wasn't a religious man. God had always seemed too abstract compared to the tangible gods of steel, glass, and money he had worshipped. But the cold was gnawing at his marrow, and the heavy oak doors promised shelter. He pushed inside. The warmth hit him like a physical blow, thawing his frozen ears and nose so quickly it burned. The air smelled of beeswax candles and damp wool. He walked to the very last pew, his heavy sanitation boots squeaking on the stone floor, and sat down, keeping his head low. He felt unclean here, not just because of the grime of his job, but because of the grime on his soul. The midnight mass was beginning. The choir began to sing Silent Night, their voices rising into the vaulted ceiling, pure and crystalline. Silent night, holy night. Porter closed his eyes, and the darkness behind his eyelids was suddenly filled with ghosts. For 2 years, he had carried a shield of bitterness. He had told himself he was a victim of circumstances. If only Felix hadn't cooked the books. If only Isla hadn't been so demanding. If only Luna had told me the truth. He had replayed the narrative 1,000 times, always casting himself as the tragic hero who was deceived. But tonight, in the silence between the notes, the shield cracked. He thought of the look on Luna's face on the street today. It wasn't hatred. Hatred implies that the person still matters, that they still have the power to hurt you. It was pity. It was the way one looks at a condemned building before the demolition crew arrives. Regret for what it could have been, but acceptance that it is structurally unsound. structurally unsound. The architectural term echoed in his mind. He had built his life like a cheap facade. He had prioritized the curb appeal, the Italian suits, the penthouse address, the trophy wife, while neglecting the foundation. He had treated Luna like a load-bearing wall that he could remove to open up the space, never realizing she was the bedrock the entire house stood on. He remembered a night, 3 years ago, when he had come home drunk after losing a client. He had been vile, throwing his portfolio across the room. Luna hadn't yelled. She had picked up the papers, smoothed them out, and made him tea. She had believed in his talent when he had lost faith in himself. "You are more than this job, Porter," she had said. "You are a builder. You just need to find the right ground." He had sneered at her then. He had thought she was offering platitudes because she didn't understand the high-stakes world he lived in. Now, he realized, she was the only one who had ever seen him clearly. She had seen the man he could be, while he was busy trying to be the man society admired. "It wasn't them," Porter whispered, his voice cracking in the empty pew. "It was me." The realization was a physical weight, pressing the air from his lungs. It wasn't Felix's fraud or Isla's greed that destroyed him. They were just symptoms. The disease was his own hollowness. He had sold his family for a reflection in a mirror, and when the mirror broke, there was nothing behind it. Tears, hot and foreign, pricked his eyes. He let them fall. He didn't wipe them away. He sat there, a man in a green jumpsuit surrounded by people in their Sunday best, and he wept for the first time in his life without thinking about how it looked. When the service ended, he didn't leave immediately. He found a discarded parish bulletin on the bench. He patted his pockets and found a cheap ballpoint pen he used to sign work logs. He smoothed the paper out on his knee. His hand trembled. He wanted to write a defense. He wanted to explain to Luna that he was stressed, that he was manipulated. But as the pen touched the paper, he stopped. No more lies, he told himself. No more facades. He began to write. "Dear Luna, I am not writing this to ask for money. I am not writing to ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I am writing to release you. I saw Leo today. He's beautiful. He looks happy. That is all that matters. Seeing him wave at me, it was the only thing I have done right, helping to bring him into this world, even if I forfeited the right to be part of it. I have spent 2 years blaming the world for my fall. But tonight, I know the truth. I fell because I was standing on nothing. I traded a diamond for a piece of glass because I didn't know the difference between value and shine. I will not contest anything. I will not try to contact you again. I will not be a shadow over your life. You deserve the light. You always were the light, even when I was too blind to see it. I am going to leave Chicago. I'm going to go somewhere where no one knows my name, and I'm going to try to build something real. Not a building, a man. Thank you for the rosemary chicken. I'm sorry I never ate it. It smells like home in my memory, and I have no home now. Goodbye, Serafina. Porter. He stared at the letter. It was the most honest thing he had ever created. It was better than any blueprint he had ever drawn. He folded the paper carefully and placed it in his pocket. He zipped up his coat and walked out into the night. The storm had settled into a steady, silent snowfall. Porter walked toward the river. The city was asleep, the lights of the skyscrapers reflecting on the black ice of the Chicago River. He walked onto the bridge, the same bridge where he used to stand with Isla, pointing at the skyline and bragging about the penthouse he would buy. He took the letter out. For a moment, he considered mailing it. He wanted her to know. He wanted her to see his redemption. "That's ego," a voice whispered in his head. "That's still you wanting credit. If you really love her, let her be. Don't intrude. Don't ask for her attention, even for an apology." True repentance, he realized, didn't require an audience. It just required change. He tore the letter in half, then in quarters, then into tiny confetti-sized pieces. He leaned over the railing. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the wind. "I love you. Goodbye." He opened his hand. The white pieces of paper caught the wind, swirling down, 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 mixing with the falling snow until they were indistinguishable. They vanished into the dark, freezing water below. Porter stood there for a long time, watching the river flow. He felt lighter. The crushing weight of potential and ambition was gone. He was just a man, cold and alone. But for the first time in years, he was clean. He turned and walked away from the skyline, heading toward the train station. He had enough money for a one-way ticket west. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he wasn't taking Porter Garrett, the architect, with him. That man had drowned in the river. The man walking away was just Porter. And that was a place to start. 5 years later, Serafina Luna Morrison stood on the balcony of her estate, watching Leo, now 7, running through the garden with his father, Julian. They were laughing, chasing a golden retriever. Luna felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Trevor, now gray at the temples, but still sharp as a tack. "We received a donation to the foundation today, Miss Luna," Trevor said quietly. "Oh? A big one?" "No," Trevor said. "It was $50, from a carpenter in Montana. Anonymous." Luna took the receipt Trevor held out. It was a money order. In the memo line, written in a handwriting she hadn't seen in years, but recognized instantly, were the words for the heating bill. Luna smiled. It was a genuine, soft smile. "He remembered," she whispered. "Shall I return it?" Trevor asked. "No," Luna said. "Put it in the fund. Every bit counts." She looked back out at her family. She didn't think about Porter often anymore. He was a ghost, a lesson learned in the hard chapters of her youth. But she was glad he was out there, somewhere, rebuilding himself. She turned back to the warmth of her house. The rosemary chicken was in the oven, and this time, there was plenty of love to go around. Porter Garrett chased the glitter of gold and lost the diamond in his hand. He learned too late that value isn't found in bank accounts or penthouses, but in loyalty, integrity, and the warmth of a home built on truth. He paid for his arrogance with everything he had, proving that while karma is a slow wheel, it grinds exceedingly fine. Luna didn't just survive, she transcended. She showed us that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's thriving. It's refusing to let someone else's failure define your worth. What do you think? Did Porter deserve a second chance, or was his punishment fitting? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, if you believe in justice and the power of resilience, please hit that like button. It helps us tell more stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a chapter. Remember, be careful who you discard in the storm. They might be the ones who own the shelter. Thanks for watching.